Our quiet weather pattern continues. And there's not a whole lot going on other than cold fronts coming through every couple of days and some ups and downs in temperature. We're going to take a peek to see how long this pattern is going to last. And we're going to do that right now, tonight, on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, which, by the way, is also available on Spotify as well as on YouTube Music. And the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast is brought to you by Tempest by WeatherFlow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system and join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. Tempest is an affiliate of the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. Use the coupon code I want a weather station. The referral link is pinned to the top of the chat board, and it's also on the descriptor to this video. So if you make any purchases of this or anything else on the Tempest website, remember that coupon code I want a weather station, and if you do, you get.
You're going to get 10% off, Joe.
Yes, you are.
Yes.
I don't know if I mentioned this yesterday, but did I mention that my dog was probably the worst casualty of the of daylight saving to a standard time?
Is he thinking that it's breakfast or dinner time?
Well, their body clocks don't recognize the symbolic nature of the time on the clock. So, he's used to his trips to the park at 9 a.m. So when 9 a.m. became 8 a.m., he got all excited and jumping all over me. So I had to give in eventually. He usually gets walked about 2, which became 1. He usually gets fed between 3 and 4. That became 2 and 3. And I don't know. Otherwise, it was kind of a crazy day yesterday. But he's back on a schedule like he should be. I went out and did some things today and didn't come back till 3:30 standard time. So he had to wait for his dinner. So now he got it at 3:30. So hopefully that straightens out. Did you have a nice day? Did Mr. Sweeney have any problems with the hour change?
Well, no, I don't think so. No, Mr. Sweeney is always revved up and ready to go out. When we first got him back in March, Renata put a string of these bells on the back door. And I said, what is that for? And he said, we're going to teach him to ring the bell whenever he has to go out. And for the first 2 or 3 months, that didn't work at all. I kept trying to show him with his paw, ring the bell, ring the bell. But now in the last, couple of months, he doesn't ring it with his paw. He literally goes and he pushes the bell up and over him to ring it. But the problem with Sweeney is that he rings it like every half hour or 45 minutes. I mean, I say, I just took you out, for God's sake. You were just out before, and he looks at me with those big brown eyes.
You realize, of course, that the purpose of the ring is actually in reverse, is to get you to move and not to get him to move.
Probably.
You understand? I hope you understand that,
Well,
because at the end of the day, they run your life, and that pretty much squares it away.
yes, I tell him in the morning, do you want some breakfast? The tail wags. In the dinner, and of course at night, when it's time for us to go to bed, I take him out one more time, and then when he comes back in, he waits for his, ready now for this, folks, his nighty-night cookie.
Yeah.
This is another invention that Renata came up with, was the nighty-night cookie, and he wants he wants something. It could be a dog biscuit or anything, as long as he has something in his mouth to digest before he calls it a night or whatever. So he's running our lives, Joe. That's what
they do.
More or less, that's the start. I mean, we got 2 people in their 60s, and but maybe it's right. Maybe you're right. I mean, it's good that he forces us to
Well,
go out and do a little exercise, to go up and down the driveway and go around the
right, the
block or
dog
whatever.
is sort of the dog's mindset is along the lines of if I ring this bell, they will get off, they will get up off their semi-soft rear ends and
Exactly.
do something. So yeah,
Exactly.
I get it.
But
Welcome
at
to,
least at least the weather is cooperative. At least we have basically a quiet weather pattern to talk about now for the next week or so. It doesn't. I mean, as you mentioned at the top of the show, every once in a while a front comes by, maybe a little rain, but really no big storms looming for a number of days to come.
it's not just here either. I mean, except for the Pacific Northwest, which is getting the stuff that's coming in full force, and then it moves across in a much weaker state. Most of the country is quiet right now. There's hardly any thunderstorm activity. There's the weather here was another beautiful day. I never paid that much close. Obviously I didn't pay a lot of attention to weather here. There's a difference when you're watching it from afar as opposed to when you're actually living it day to day. I lived northeast weather for most of my life, and I'm down here. The autumns here are amazing. It's dry season, and it's exactly that. I've been mentioning, we've only had 3 days of rain since the beginning of September, and even I don't even know if there was enough rain to fill a water glass. So it's been just gorgeous. I think we got to 70 today. I know Atlanta's should go to 80 tomorrow. I'll probably if Atlanta goes to 80, I'll go to 75. And right now it's 51. So I'm radiating like mad. Welcome, everybody on the chat board tonight to tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. And for those of you who are not on the chat board but are watching in the background, lurking about, we welcome you too. Uh,
Could you also just allow me to share for a second?
of course, of
Because we
course.
got a request from Lord Kate on the chat board.
Oh yes, by all means. Uh, go ahead.
So this is for Lord Kate. She
We
asked, and there it is.
actually, I think Lord Kate, I believe, is not a she. So just so you know.
Lord Kate?
Yeah, I don't think I don't think Lord Kate. I think Lord Kate is not a she.
Oh, okay. Well, I got thrown off by the Kate then. Anyway, there as Lord Kate had asked, and he said you need to show us your dogs on camera would be lovely. So here's my dog. Well, actually, it's more like my wife's dog, and that's Mr. Sweeney. This is right after we got him, and he's a shelter dog. Um, we adopted him, and we've had him now for about 7 months. He's going to be 2 years old in February, and he's a handful. But anyway, he now here's the animal that now rules our Renata and I's life. So there you go.
Well,
So
very good.
that's 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 what that's what Mr. Sweeney looks like for all of you who are wondering.
All right, and for those of you who are lurking in the background, which is where I was before we got to see Mr. Sweeney, uh, make sure that you subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you don't miss the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, which is Sunday through Thursday at 7:35, unless we something with the schedule, which we tend to do every so often. And we're off Fridays and Saturdays unless there's a storm going on, in which case we will let you know that we will be doing extra shows. So there. But yes, the pattern is quiet, and I'm not sure what to make of that, or if indeed there's anything really worth trying to make something of it. But it is a quiet stretch that we're in. Um, I'm not sure exactly how this is going to get resolved when we get out of it, which of course we're going to at some point.
At
Uh,
some point, we will.
right. But for now, it's the middle of fall, and the atmosphere seems to have decided that it's not going to really do very much at the moment. And we're going to see some decent temperature swings though, because it's going to get chilly tomorrow night and Wednesday. It's going to some places may warm up on Thursday, depending on that warm front and how it lines up. It might be one of those days where North of you, Joe, barely gets out of the 40s, and then southern New Jersey and southern Pennsylvania and points southward make it up to 70 or so.
Right.
And then it looks like it's going to get chilly again for Friday, that's a pretty decent high coming down with some rather cool thicknesses. So it looks like I think it's going to get cold for the weekend. But as far as anything other than a handful of patchy showers that might or might not go by in a few places in eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England, in the next 7 days is just not going to be doing very much.
Well, actually, the interesting thing about this week is that not too far away to the north of our area being my area, the lower Hudson Valley, there may be some snow and ice or sleet conditions that will be needed to be dealt with a warm frontal passage, and that'll be for late Wednesday night into early Thursday. So,
right, that would be that's gonna, yeah, I would say probably north and northeast of I-90, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit further south than that, but not much further south. But yeah, and that'll extend up into northern New England. But again, a minor system. It's not a big deal here.
Right.
All right. Satellite loop is not showing a whole lot tonight in the east. We had a fairly decent day, but you can see the outline of what's crossing the Great Lakes and back through the northern plains as low pressure moves. Everything seems to be moving right along the Canadian border, so that's where we're going with this. And there are some high clouds up into New England, but the rest of the East Coast is pretty quiet. There's a little bit of high cloudiness streaming out of the subtropical Pacific across Mexico into Texas and Louisiana, but there's not much in the way of precip with that. We've got a fairly well-defined swirl off the coast of Washington and Oregon, and that's where we're seeing some weather action tonight as we check out the latest radars. And actually, we should look up in the northeast because there are some downpours and maybe even a rumble or two of thunder moving across north central New York at the moment. So this is this sort of warm front cold front combination that's kind of pivoting its way across the northeast tonight. But it's moving right along. It's not exactly producing a whole lot of rain, but that's what this is what we got. And the radars are quiet when you go from south of I-90 going all the way down the east coast into Florida. I mean, there's just absolutely nothing as far as echoes are concerned. We have a little bit of shower activity going on over the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and here's where it's a bit busier. California, some patchy showers. Up into Washington and Oregon, some patchy showers. Also into Montana and Idaho. Up in northern Idaho, some of this is in the form of snow in some of the higher elevations. But that is just about it. The chairman, Scott Briller, hitting Super Chat tonight. Thank you for being the first to hit the tip jar. Two of the coldest places in the Northeast shared the morning low the last 2 days, Joe. Etzcourt, Maine, and Mount Washington. But how low did they get? Scott. He left that out, but those were the two coldest places in the Northeast with this warm front cold front combo that is moving on through. I'll take a quick look at the Storm Prediction Center. I didn't really look today to see what they were doing, if they were doing anything.
I think it's rather quiet for the storm prediction people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They had a marginal risk up for coastal Washington and Oregon, and yesterday. No organized severe thunderstorms are forecast for tonight. No thunderstorms are forecast for tomorrow anywhere in the U.S., and no severe weather is forecast for Wednesday. So yeah, they got their feet up they got their feet up on the desks.
We're also getting into that time of the year now for the folks over at the National Hurricane Center. Things really look like they've wound down in recent days in the tropics.
Tropical cyclone activity is not expected during the next 48 hours. And on the 7-day outlook, no new tropical cyclones are expected during the next 7 days. So they obviously are looking at the GFS, which repeatedly, every run, develops a hurricane or a tropical storm in the Caribbean. It's been doing this for I don't know how many days in a row now. It's got to be at least 7 or 8 days in a row where it's been doing this, maybe even longer. And it's just not happening. I want to be really careful with trying to figure out the longer range on the GFS, only because of the fact that it keeps developing these tropical cyclones in the Caribbean. And obviously, that's going to have an impact on the upper pattern, certainly in the upper pattern in the east and in the southeastern part of the United States. It might, strengthen ridges that otherwise would not be strengthened. And I was kind of looking at the ensembles going into the long range a little while ago before we started the show tonight, and noticed that the ensembles and the operationals don't seem to match up very well once you get, say, past day 8 or day 9. The ensembles don't have as warm a look as the operational has. Not that it has a warm look every waking minute, but the operationals are tending to do things that I think may not necessarily be the case.
Well, in a quiet pattern like this, you really have to look hard for any kind of subtle changes that might occur over the next not just the next few days, but even way out. I mean, I tell you, I mean, after we get past next Wednesday night, Thursday, it seems like the next major precipitation maker for this part of the country, the Northeast, may not come until all the way until the few days before Thanksgiving, maybe around the 22nd of November. At least that's how it looks to me.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly could see that there's not a whole lot there's just not a whole lot there in the next 10 days, or at least the next 10 days, and that takes us to the 16th. So if you want to extend it a little bit longer than that, I mean, on the other hand, I'm always hesitant when the GFS long range goes out 16 days and doesn't show a drop of rain. It has a high probability of being wrong. It just does, because I mean, Joe, how many times over the course of the last 30, 40 years that you've been working have we seen stretches of 2 weeks or more where you don't see a drop of rain? Doesn't happen very often.
Right.
I don't even think it happens. I think you have to go like, I don't even think you could say that it happens once a year or once every 2 years or even once every 3 years. It's just really unusual for the eastern part of the United States, which can get its weather from so many different directions, that you could go 2 weeks without seeing a drop of rain.
It's tough. It's difficult. But look what just happened this weekend. Here we were, many people were promoting, hey, this looks like it's going to be the first weekend in 9 weekends where there's no measurable precipitation. I mean, it's only a few days in advance. And look what happened. Saturday night or early Sunday morning, I actually had precipitation. And in fact, in the aftermath of the posting it on Facebook, a number of people, like one person in Mount Kisco, another person in Poughkeepsie, Newburgh, we had some rain, and one person actually said, hey, it came down pretty hard for a while. I mean, most of us were asleep. But, if you can't definitively say it's going to be dry a few days in advance, how can you possibly say it's going to be dry for, as you point out, like 16 days in a row?
Yeah, I mean, it is a bit unusual. Oh, yeah, one of my favorite people on the chat board, who I think if there was an award for best name, is Bella Lugrissi. He's on board tonight. Jess Harden is got his wife, he says, substituting tonight, so she's watching for him. Jess, I don't have anything new to report as far as the winter is concerned. It's just nothing's going to happen, right? Obviously, nothing's going to be happening right now. So let's just kind of be patient. We sort of know what some of the forecasts that are out there, and I didn't see anything that's changed from that. I will say, let's get through this. Let me get through this here. WPC's rainfall forecast for the next 7 days, a tenth to maybe between a tenth and a quarter of an inch. from coastal Maine down through southern New England, down through the southeastern U.S. A few patches of a half inch plus in upstate New York. Probably that's front end loaded with what's going on tonight, and up in northern Maine. Also, a half to three. We may actually get some rain here at the end of this week. Glory, hallelujah. But we've got a quarter to a half inch down the Appalachians of the Tennessee Valley. Some higher amounts along the coastal bend of Texas, and you can see the bigger amounts that are showing up as once again in the Pacific Northwest. Now, with regards to snow, WPC is not really doing very much with this. Let me see if they've updated this the forecast. This is probability. I always like to look at the probability, to start out with the probability for at least 2 inches. And we see it. All right, so they've got a really small area up in northwestern Maine, uh, west of Caribou, where there's a 50% chance for 2 inches there. Most of the snow, and this is something I think maybe we need to pay attention to anyway, is the fact that with this pattern and these systems that are moving along the Canadian border, it is producing increasing snow cover across southern Canada, particularly in eastern Canada. So that's kind of interesting in and of itself. Whether it has any long-term implications or not, I don't know. In the west, we've got some areas in the central and northern Rockies where we have 50% or higher probabilities for at least 2. And you see the areas here on the map: northwestern Wyoming, central Colorado, northern Idaho, northwestern Montana, also a few areas in the mountains in Washington and Oregon, and in a small area in the Sierra Nevadas in southern California. And on the long range, uh, the WPC folks seem to have the Northwest with some small areas where there's probability for at least a few inches, mainly up in Washington State and northern Idaho, going right through the weekend and into early next week. In the East, it really is, nothing on a little bit in Maine on Friday, I think. Trying to get the map to put the thing on. As soon as I move the mouse, it takes it. There it goes. So that's for Friday. Just some small areas in northwestern and western Maine. Nothing on Saturday. Nothing on Sunday. And nothing on Monday. So there you go. So I was looking at the teleconnections, Joe, and the teleconnections are as boring as the weather because if you see, this is the Arctic oscillation on today's forecast, which is actually forecast to go negative, just slightly below the neutral line over the next few days, around the 9th, 10th, 11th. Then it goes slightly above the neutral line after that and just kind of straddles it. Although the members are all over the place. You've got some of them that go almost 2 standard deviations positive, and you've got some of them that go almost a standard deviation and 3/4 negative. And
Right.
the AO negative AO oftentimes correlates to colder weather in the U.S. And depending on the setup, it could be the East. But I was looking at all of these. So you look at the PNA, the Pacific North America Pattern Index, and this one is just a little bit negative and just basically is straddling the neutral line for the next 2 weeks. Some members up, some members down, but the mean is almost right on the neutral line. And if we look at the NAO, the North Atlantic Oscillation, which is the pressure changes up in the North Atlantic, is a little bit negative, kind of gets back to about the neutral line after the 15th, but here too, it's just right, it's right at 0. So I guess I guess when you have all your teleconnections near the 0 line, it sort of means that there's not a whole lot of amplitude in one direction or the other, and if there's not a whole lot of amplitude, there's not a whole lot in the way of storm systems.
And William Huber on the chat board, I don't really understand your question. He writes, Joe Rayo, what the snow in Canada doesn't allow cold air the warm up. I don't quite understand what.
I'm sorry. How did he word it? He must be voice.
Joe Rayo, what the snow in Canada doesn't allow cold air the warm up.
I think maybe what he's saying is if there's deep snow cover in Canada, it tends to produce colder, colder is helps in producing colder air masses.
Oh, well, yeah, well, I agree on that.
Now, whether those air masses can't really come down in full force if we don't have some amplitude somewhere. Um, let's see. We also had something else on the chat board here. I just lost it. Here we go. Where is it? It's flood weather. He says it's flood weather. And he says this is it's day 7 and 8 from now. Offshore, the northeast, rapidly sharpening deep trough. Yeah, exactly. And a strong surface low. If it ends up further west, the interior could possibly get something. I kind of look at this whole flattish pattern, and I'm trying to find, Fled, if there's a catalyst to move the troughs around. Uh, and right now, there doesn't appear to be. But I have a difficult time with the GFS at this point, as I said earlier, because of the fact that you're getting all this tropical noise in the Caribbean after day 7, and I don't know that any of that's at least according to what we've seen in the last week to 10 days, where it keeps putting hurricanes there. The European doesn't do that. The European doesn't do that at all. None of the other models seem to be doing anything with regards to doing tropical activity, and that's important because that's going to impact ridges and troughs in the east, and depending on where one is centered. If there's a ridge, it could strengthen it. If there's a trough, it could deflect it or be weakened by. I don't know. So I'm kind of I'm dubious about what the GFS is doing in its longer range overall, but I'm not exactly sure what would be different. Okay, something may be different than what's being indicated, but I'm not sure if it'll be for a deeper trough in the east or a stronger ridge in the middle. I don't know. So I'm giving you an honest answer. There are times when I just don't know. And here's the upper air from the 18Z run, Joe. So you got we're just coming off the weekend where we've had a trough pull out. Now we've got another trough coming in. This one was supposed to be one that was supposed to go all the way south, and it turned out not to be. So that's pulling out. You can see there's energy coming into the northwest that moves behind it. So you get another trough that comes into the east late in the week. And this one has a bit of a Canadian connection, so we should be able to get some colder air out of this. Then that trough pulls out. You've got something in the Gulf of Alaska that's dropping straight south along 140, 145-ish, which is sort of interesting. In the east, troughs pull out. We're at mid-month. There's a little bit of ridging, but you see, if you look, there's a tropical system there in the Caribbean. That sort of hooks up with what this trough that's off the east coast. But if that's not there, I don't know. I don't know if you're going to have the same outcome. So that's my question. And then you've got a deep trough coming into the west that dives in, but just as fast as it dives in, it pulls out, and then that swings into the east toward the latter part of the forecast period. So right now, I'm just kind of the one thing I'm sure of is that the rest of this week and going into this weekend, there's not going to be a whole lot of exceptional weather going on.
Yeah, and looks like we'll be on the warm side, relatively speaking, for a good part of the next week to 10 days, and dry too. Again, after we get past this wave of moisture coming through Wednesday night and Thursday, it appears we're not going to see very much in the way of any kind of precipitation until maybe around the 22nd of November. Now, between this coming Wednesday night and Thursday and November 22nd, I'm sure that there will be a couple of renegade showers that may move through, but I'm talking about in the overview of things, more often than not, we'll be looking at dry conditions. And again, relatively mild weather as well.
Tomorrow will be the warmest day of the week for eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England. So you can probably see mid-60s to low 70s once this front clears and the sun comes out during the day tomorrow. We'll turn a little colder on Wednesday. Then here's this warm front, cold front for Thursday, and you can see that the models are generating some snow, some light snow and sleet, but way to the north. And the European had a different look with this, Joe. It tended to hold the warm front back having a much more difficult time moving through on the old run. Let's see if the new run. Let me go back to the 12Z. Now, this is not going to show snow on this, folks. This just shows rainfall amounts. It doesn't show precip type, so everything is green. But you can see for Thursday, the warm front sets up, and it's got a weak low into western New York, but the isobars are all sort of bagged down into New Jersey. So this is, I don't know, as opposed to having the whole thing just bodily move up to the northeast. I mean, this is probably the most exciting thing that's going to happen this week. And then beyond that, I mean, it'll turn a little colder for Friday and the weekend, but it looks like it'll be a dry weekend, which is good. There is something coming out of Mexico and the Gulf and Texas. As I said earlier, we do have some of that subtropical moisture. The southern part of this system on Thursday brings some rain, some much needed rain. Oh, by the way, we have a 2,000 acre wildfire going on, not that far away from here.
Really?
In Andrews, North Carolina, and it was 0% contained as of early this afternoon. I don't know. I haven't heard anything since. But it is, a lot of this is because of how bone dry it is. But you can see the rain there for Friday, and then that goes out. But there's more that starts to come up for Sunday night and Monday in the southeast. But the eastern part of the United States, the northeast and mid-Atlantic states look to be dry. And, there is something also, a bit of a change. We were talking about if this is El Nino, why is everything going into the Pacific Northwest and as opposed to going into California? Well, the Europeans kind of telegraphing a change maybe coming after this weekend, with more energy moving into the southern part of the West. So more into California and less into the Pacific Northwest, as it does have a fairly wrapped up low there near San Francisco. By the time we get to day 9 and day 10, it actually starts bringing rain into California and probably mountain snows as early as next Monday. So it is. So maybe that's part of the process here that we're going to have to see in order to get some things to change.
Yeah, well, we're going to need something, Joe. I mean, it is, overall, in the overview of things, and I know a lot of folks on the chat board are into dynamic meteorology. They like to see something exciting happen, but overall, this really is a kind of a boring pattern.
Chuck Cardillo hit super chat tonight. Thank you, Chuck, for hitting the tip jar. I saw somebody else, Matthew Howe. I totally forgot about the wildfires, he said. Yeah, I just was talking with a friend of mine today. He was reading it. He saw the news, a news headline about it, from one of the locals. So it's not too far from Hooterville here, Joe. It's about Andrews, North Carolina is about, I don't know, was it about 45 minutes away, something like that.
Let me tell you something. If you pass the Shady Rest,
yeah,
and you happen to see 3 young ladies up on the water tower,
there's a little hotel called the Shady Rest at the junction.
And a dog too.
Petticoat Junction.
Yes.
Frank Scalera says, I guess we deserve a little break after all the heavy rain we went through from the summer and last month. I think this is probably the period where the atmosphere is just sort of getting ready to get into the winter pattern, and it's trying to figure out what it's going to do. I guess that's maybe the best way to justify all this.
I agree that it's certainly not going to stay this way all through the entire rest of fall and into the winter. Things are going to change. The nut is going to crack, or the egg is going to crack eventually, and we'll see how it cracks. I think when it does crack, it'll make a lot of you winter weather lovers happy, because I really don't think we're going to see a repeat of what we've had over the last few years around here. Incidentally, the books have closed on October 2023, Joe, at Central Park, 2.6 degrees warmer than average. The 4th mildest October in the years since 2000, and the 20th mildest October since the records began way back in 1869. The first week of the month was 7 degrees above average. And then from October 27th through the 30th, it was 14 degrees above average. And those
So
11 days.
right, I was going to. We talked about this last week. If you take out and you can't take out the 5 warmest days because they are what they are. But if you take out the 5 warmest days, the month was colder than normal.
Well, that's what tilted the scale in the direction of an above normal month. I mean, those 11 days overall were 10 degrees above average. Meanwhile, the rest of the month, and you're right here, if you subtract those 11 days and just look at the rest of the month, the other 20 days of October, the rest of the month was 1 degree below average.
All right.
But again, because of the fact that those 11 days were so much above normal, that's what tilted everything toward a 2.6 degree above normal month of October. 3 days had highs in the 80s, October 3rd, 4th, and October 28th. And the warmest reading of the month, 83 on October 4th, was the warmest reading in October since 2019. And the high of 80 on October 28th was Central Park's latest reading in the 80s, going back to 1993 when it occurred on the 15th of November. And the average date of the last high in the 80s is September 28th. So you can see overall, there's some real warm days in October that help to push the average temperatures up. As far as precipitation, after 14.25 inches of rain fell at Central Park in September, the fourth rainiest month on record, October dried out and had about 10 inches less, although the 3.9 inches that was measured was slightly below average. This was the driest October since 2018. Much of the month saw 3.9 inches of rain, and that came from 3 storms between October 14th and October 30th, 0.81 on October 14th, 1.51 on October 20th and 21st, and 1.06 inches on October 29th and 30th. Otherwise, the rest of the month was pretty much bone dry. So, again, it was a slightly below normal month in terms of precipitation and pretty well above normal in terms of temperatures, but only because 11 out of the 31 days was way, way out of whack with temperatures like 10 or more degrees above normal.
Matthew Howe and Christina Pedia, I have no idea why my camera is doing what it's doing. This started like a couple of days. Well, it periodically, if I move, it will zoom in or zoom out, and I didn't touch anything, I didn't change anything. It just all of a sudden started doing this, where it sort of zooms in on its own, and then it zooms out on its own. So I I, I have no clue, none. But I do have Briller Jeopardy.
Yes, and the chairman hit super chats again and says that Mother Briller is dusting off her figure skates.
Glory, hallelujah. Rockefeller Center was going to open. I don't know if it's open yet. Is it opened up yet for skating?
It is open.
It is open for skating. Well, there you go.
And actually, it was funny that they opened up the skating rink in Rockefeller Center, and it was during that time when the temperatures were in the 70s and 80s. Oh, I think that ice was probably a little soft.
Yes. And tonight is about November extremes in New York City. What was the highest temperature ever in New York City Central Park in the month of November?
Was it in the very beginning of November, like November 1st or 2nd? They had like an 80-degree reading around 1950?
Very good. Very good. 1950 is the year. But we need to get the number. Tyler Fienger right off the bat nails it at 84, and so does Keith James II at 84. So that's great. The next question: what was the lowest? What was the lowest temperature ever in November in Central Park?
Was it? I know it had to be below freezing. I'm just wondering whether or not it was really whacked off early, way down. I'll say 22.
Oh my God. The mountain climber is at almost the very, not quite to the cliff, but almost. Joe Z says 18. Maggie P 16. Michael Azera 14. Virginia P5 12. Northern Grace 13. Steve Lapointe, you're getting closer, 10. Um, so obviously, Joe, it's in the dingle digits.
Wow.
Oh, yes. Anthony says 14. No, we're talking under 10, folks. Under 10.
Well,
Uh,
this
Bella
has to date
Lugrissi
back.
says 8.
This has to date back like to the 19th century. Then
Yes. Bella Lugrissi has 8. Still too high. Helen Bertona, 7. Fledweather, you're too low at 4. Keith Rosenberg, you're too high at 6. So I guess what that means is, come on, Matthew Howe gets it at 5. 1875.
oh God.
Okay, and in that same day, in 1875, when it got down to 5, it also was the coldest daytime maximum temperature, the coldest high. So what do you think that was?
I'll say 21.
Now you're over the cliff. Um, okay. So the coldest high was on that day. So what was the high temperature on the day that it hit 5? Tyler Fienga says 18. Kenneth Rosenberg says 18. Carol DeCara says 19. Fledweather says 17. Michael Azera says 13. Northern Grace said 15. And Steve Lapointe gets it 14. So the mean, Joe, it was 9.5 for that
Wow.
day, whatever day of the month it is. I don't have the day of the month here. What was the greatest monthly snowfall? Monthly snowfall. Okay, monthly snowfall.
I'll go with something crazy. I'll say 18 inches.
Uh, okay. So I guess if you were just standing at the edge of the cliff right now, um, well, you went off the cliff with the last one, so never mind that. Um, you said 18. Chuck Cardillo says 17. Steve Lapointe says 17. Frank R says 18. You're all. Oh, there's Kenneth Rosenberg gets it 19. 19 inches, and that was in 1898. And the bonus question tonight: since 1869 in Central Park, how many Novembers have had at least 5 inches of snow for the month? How many Novembers have had at least 5 inches of snow for the month?
Well, God. How about how about 7?
How about 7? Well, you're close, Joe, but Fledweather gets it with 6. And by the way, it's a small data set, but 5 of those 6 winters that followed the 5 inches in the month of November wound up being above normal with total snowfall for the season. So, but
I
it's
got to tell you something. If there was such a thing as a time machine, and it was somehow possible to bring somebody from the late 19th century, like 1875 or 1880 or whatever, and bring him to today, 2023, he'd probably like be shaking his head and saying, "My God, what have we done?" I mean, it's like Bermuda now in the month of November. I mean, the way you describe November, way back when.
yep. Just look at the numbers. Just go back and look at the stats from the 1880s. I mean, those were 10 very cold
Hmm.
years, and very snowy years too.
Yeah.
But those were the good old days, I guess, the 1880s. Anything else you want to talk about tonight?
And they didn't have snow blowers back then.
No, they didn't. Uh,
Uh, I don't have anything off the top of my head.
yeah, I don't either. It's kind of. Although we did have somebody left a message on on the YouTube on yesterday's show. Apparently wants to apply for the job as producer because he doesn't like the fact that we chit chat too much.
Oh, really?
Yes. So when that producer job opens up, I will let that person know. Okay. Honestly, the things, yeah, I marvel at the things people put up sometimes. I just kind of shake. I just read some of the stuff, and it's like you really took time out of your life to get upset about this. I mean, I don't know. I don't get it.
Joe and I come from when we're from television, where we had to listen to somebody in our little earpiece, what we call the eye of B, and we'd get into a discussion about something really interesting about meteorology, and all of a sudden you'd hear the voice say, "Wrap it, wrap it, wrap it up."
Yeah. Well, you see, here's the thing. It's there's that camera zoom again. I don't know why it's doing that. Um, it's our show, so we could do what we want, and that's all there is to it. There's no time limit. We don't have to be out by a certain time.
I,
YouTube YouTube
I
does
love
the
that.
commercial breaks whenever they want, so I can't. That's something I can't help.
I can't.
But
You don't have no control over the Zoom, because I thought for a second I was going to get a close up of your nose, Joe.
no, and I don't know what sets it. I don't know what sets it off. Is it when if I put my face close to the camera, if I move too far away, I don't know what this what it is that causes that to happen. It just started happening 2 days ago. I didn't do anything. I didn't touch anything. It just started doing it on its own. I don't know.
Oh well.
It is. It just is. Okay, okay. So the Joe and Joe Weather Show is every night, brought to you by Tempest by Weatherflow. Tempest is our affiliate here on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system and join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is pinned at the top of the chat board. It's also on the descriptor to this video. And if you use the coupon code I want a weather station for anything that you purchase, uh, you get
You'll get 10% off.
that you will. I'm trying to think if there's anything. There was something. Oh, Keith James, you were asking me about another cooking thing. So right now, this is what I'm doing. I'm having Thanksgiving here on Saturday because I have family in the area. So since they're here now, I said, well, why don't we do Thanksgiving this coming Saturday? So they're all coming up. So I'm doing the turkey, clearly. And I made my red wine brine tonight. The turkey's going to go in there tomorrow and brine for 72 hours before it goes into the oven on Saturday. And in the brine, obviously there's red wine. There are onions, carrots, orange juice. I'm sorry, apple juice, brown sugar, a cup and a half of salt, water, chicken stock, pomegranate juice, and rosemary and sage and garlic. I forgot. Rosemary, sage, and garlic. So the turkey's going to go in there tomorrow and sit in the brine until Friday, and then it will be taken out of the brine. What are you doing? What is that? I can't. I see it's a turkey with eyes or something, and holding a. What's he holding? A beer?
Yeah, it says I am no cook, but I can follow directions, which said let the bird chill in the sink for a few hours.
Well, mine's going to chill in the brine. It's going to be in there in the refrigerator. So,
He's got,
uh,
he's got, if I can make it a little larger. So he's got a bottle of Coors in one wing, and he's got the remote control for the TV in the other wing, and he's just sitting there chilling.
Janet Dunn says, "What kind of red wine?" I use a Merlot, but you could use any. You can use any wine really, but I used a Merlot last year, and with all those ingredients that I mentioned, and that was, I had everybody tell me it was the best turkey they've ever had. Can you exit out and exit back in again?
I exited out.
Well,
Oh,
unshare and share or share and unshare. Let me see
okay.
if
Well,
I can get you back. That hasn't happened in a while. Now it decided to happen tonight, along with my camera going crazy back and forth. Uh, but if you could take any standard brine recipe and just play with it, I don't with some of this stuff I don't really sometimes I look at the recipes and I say, you know what, I could make it better, or I could try to make it better. I've gotten very courageous because I've been watching a lot of Julia Child videos, and I made these pork chops where you make them kind of like chicken cutlets. You know, you're going to bread them and, some flour, egg, breadcrumbs, and then you fry them for about 3 minutes, and then you bake them for about another 10. But in the egg mixture, you add you add 2 tablespoons of olive oil, and then I added like 3 tablespoons of B&B, which is a pretty strong brandy, and those pork chops were darn good. They came out really, really good. Frank Scalera, if you're in this area, you can always come by, and I'll always, have a meal for you. How's that? Yes, a turkey is probably playing games with my camera. All right, so here we are. It's 8:26. Don't forget the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast is also available on Spotify and on YouTube Music, and also on Amazon Music. So wherever and eventually it should be all over the place because, well, Joe, my understanding is that Taylor Swift watches this show
Oh,
almost as much as she watches the Kansas City Chiefs football game. So,
no. I didn't mention that. I didn't mention last night. I'm not mentioning it now about the Giants. So I'll just let
oh,
that
what did
pass.
they do? Did they play yesterday?
Well, if they were on the schedule, then they were supposed to play, but it was almost as if they never showed up.
Oh, really? I tell you the truth. I didn't even pay a bit of attention. The only thing they were talking about my friends were talking about this morning was how horrible the ending to the Dallas Eagles game, the Cowboys Eagles game was. It was the worst mismanagement of the last 2 minutes of a game that they've ever seen on both sides. So anyway, we'll see everybody tomorrow. Nighty night.
And thanks again to the chairman who hit Super Chat twice, and also to Chuck Cardillo. Thank you very much.
Nighty night, everybody. See you tomorrow.
Bye.